welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the nutritional and lifestyle tips to actively gain muscle mass. Now, we all know that muscle is important. So muscle is a metabolically active tissue. Muscle is good for us, and as we start to age, I think the research really shows us that every year past 40, our muscle mass drops off about 1 or 2%. So we actually start losing muscle mass as we get older as well. So muscle is something we really want to hold on to, and also for that nice lean toned look, we want some muscle mass, right? If we want to look like we're sort of fit and toned, of course muscle mass is important. So I get so many questions from people saying, hey Leanne, my goal is to gain muscle, what do I need to do? So my first tip when it comes to muscle mass and gaining some muscle mass is to eat in a calorie surplus. You will always gain muscle easier if you're eating in a surplus. So what that means is you're taking in more calories than what your body actually needs. It is easiest to gain muscle in a surplus. But what a lot of people don't, appreciate or understand is that when you're in a calorie surplus, yes, it's a lot easier to gain muscle, but you'll also put on a small amount of fat mass as well. Now, that's not saying that that's a bad thing. You can always put yourself back into a deficit in order to drop that fat mass at a later stage. And that is the reason where you look at a lot of sort of bodybuilders and people who compete in fitness competitions, like bikini competitions. They go through periods throughout the year where they were in active sort of surplus, where they're gaining a little bit of they're gaining some significant muscle and a little bit of fat mass as well. Then they'll drop them back down into a deficit, where the goal is to maintain their muscle mass, but to drop the body fat loss as well. So it's easier if you can cycle through periods of actively gaining muscle mass in a surplus and then actively losing body fat in a calorie deficit, but also aiming to maintain the new muscle mass that you put on. So for the majority of adults, you will gain muscle mass easier in a calorie surplus. You just need to eat more food and you need to train appropriately. There is a concept called Newbie Gains. So if you are new to training, or you have a significant training background and you've taken months or years off, or someone like myself where I trained throughout my pregnancy but nowhere near the level of intensity or consistency that I previously trained at, I've had close to 12 months off my proper training schedule. I'm back in the gym now. I can make those newbie gains where I can drop body fat and gain muscle mass at the same time, but it's very difficult to do. It's only what we call newbie gains, where if you're new to training or you've taken a significant period of time off training, you can do that. The majority of people who have been training for quite a while do not have the benefit of the newbie gains where they can drop fat mass and put on body mass at the same time. It's really difficult. You either need to choose the goal. If you're someone who's been training for a while and pretty consistently, you need to choose the goal of either actively gaining muscle mass or try to actively drop fat mass. It's very difficult to do at the same time. The third tip that's really important when it comes to actively gaining muscle mass is to eat enough protein. So because our muscles are a metabolically active tissue, we need to eat protein to support them. Most of us don't eat enough protein, or what we do is we back end our protein intake through the day. So we don't have enough at brekkie, we don't have enough at lunch, then we have this huge whack at dinner. So not only is eating enough protein throughout the day really important, eating the required amount at regular intervals throughout the day is also really important. So actually evenly distributing your protein intake throughout the day. Your body can only absorb and utilize a certain amount of protein at one time. Say for somebody like myself, my body might only absorb and utilize maybe 30 to 40 grams of protein. If I was to go and have this enormous steak for dinner and it had 60, 70, 80 grams of protein in it, or if I had a massive steak, then a protein bar, then a protein shake, all of that protein is going to waste. My body will only take what it needs, it'll absorb that and put it towards cellular repair, muscle mass, all that sort of thing, and whatever it doesn't need, it's going to get stored on my body as body fat, or it can get used as energy. So more protein isn't necessarily better, and in the majority of cases, more protein is not good because it just leads to extra fat mass if you're eating in a surplus. So of course we want enough protein throughout the day, but actually evenly distributing it throughout the day is ideal as well. And where research from a sports nutrition perspective comes from is we want about 4 even hits of protein throughout the day. So for the average adult, what that looks like is about 25 to 30 grams of protein regularly spread apart about 4 times a day. So maybe a good protein hit at say 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 or 3 o'clock, and then at 5, 6, 7 o'clock for dinner as well. So that even distribution is just as important as actually eating enough protein. And you're probably saying, Leanne, how much protein do I actually need? So for somebody who is actively trying to gain muscle mass, if you look at the general requirements for a healthy adult in Australia, the guidelines say about 0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Now, that's actually low, but for the average Australian, that is more than enough protein. They don't actually need any more. But for somebody whose goal is actually gaining muscle mass, or who undertakes a lot of resistance-based training or strength-based training every single week, I would say that the majority of those people need on average roughly about 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight. Now, if somebody is in a larger body or what we might consider clinically obese, what I would say would be to adjust down your body weight to what would be your goal weight. So say, for example, you weigh 170 kilos. I wouldn't be saying go 170 kilos by 1.2 grams of protein and try to eat that, because that is an enormous amount of protein. I would say if you're 170 kilos, what's your goal weight? Is your goal weight, say, for example, 100 kilos? Then I would be aiming for 100 kilos by 1.2, which is still a lot of protein, but it's a lot more manageable than eating 170, if you're 170 grams trying to eat 1.2 kilos per gram. So if you're in a much larger body, adjust down your weight to what your, a realistic healthy goal weight, maybe not your goal weight, but a realistic healthy body weight for you would be, and then multiply that by 1.2. It's going to be a much better target for you. What's also really important when it comes to protein is an essential amino acid called leucine. So leucine is what is required to switch on what we call muscle protein synthesis. So muscle protein synthesis is the ability of our muscles to grow, basically. When we want to gain muscle, we want to turn on that switch in our body that allows for muscle protein synthesis. And the essential amino acid that helps that to happen is what we call leucine. Now, leucine is commonly found in a lot of animal products. Where you'd only really be worried or concerned about leucine or making sure that you're getting in enough leucine if you are following a plant-based diet, particularly if you are using something like plant-based protein powders to get your protein intake up, which is absolutely okay and a lot of people do, but you need to ensure that your serve of protein has at a minimum of 2 to 3 grams of leucine per serve, because if it doesn't, guess what, guys, we're not flipping on that switch that's going to provide that muscle protein synthesis, which is actually what we want to actively gain muscle mass. And then finally, to actively gain muscle mass, we of course need to do the appropriate amount of training. So I'm going to stay in my own lane here. I'm a dietitian. I'm not a trainer. I can't tell you guys what you need to be doing, but I would say on average, you need to be doing a couple of days a week of some sort of resistance or strength-based training. But you should absolutely chat with your trainer or some sort of exercise physiologist or personal trainer in terms of how much and what that looks like for your body and your lifestyle. Because if you're a beginner, you could be just using your body weight and that would be enough resistance. But if you're someone who has a really big training background, you might actually need to add quite a lot of load onto your squat rack or something like that. So I hope that these tips around gaining muscle mass were helpful for you. Please leave me a comment below if you have any feedback for me, if you want to ask me any questions. I'll try my best to help you out. Remember, I am a clinical dietitian, but I'm not your clinical dietitian. So without knowing you, your background, your history, your training load, I can't actually make personalized recommendations, but please feel free to ask me any sort of general questions and I'll see if I can help you guys out. Don't forget, I have 2 wonderful podcasts with over a couple of million downloads. So I've got the Leanne Nutrition podcast and I've also got the Nutrition Couch podcast. There is over 100 episodes which are completely free for you to listen to, and they're available on any good podcast app. You can also subscribe to my YouTube because we have plenty more YouTube videos coming, and if you have any ideas for future videos, please drop me a comment below and let me know. I will catch you guys in the very next video.